To get right to the point, this thing you call government, this God that you pray to solve all the problems in your life, this pretended protector and savior, this stinking heap of anti-human oppression that you so eagerly subjugate yourselves to, if anything was ever the epitome of pure evil, this is it. Trouble is, most of you are too stupid to see it. You still worship it, pay tribute to it, and allow it to chain you, shackle you, control you, and monitor you. Instead of thinking for yourselves, you're constantly clamoring for some new leader to save and protect you. Your cowardice and irresponsibility built this monster. It commands and you obey like good little slaves. And worst of all, you hold up your unthinking obedience as a virtue. You believe it makes you good people. It doesn't. It makes you stupid robots. Well, I'm here to rudely foist freedom upon you whether you want it or not. I'm going to tell you things you don't want to hear. And once I'm gone, I'm sure most of you will scramble back into slavery and government worship as quickly as you possibly can. You'll eagerly flock to the next lying politician who promises to take care of you, throw away your freedom to the next political con man who promises you security, and you will reap the rewards of your own ignorance. I can't save you from your addiction to subservience, and I don't intend to try. But there are some of us, however few, who actually want freedom, who'd rather face an uncertain world as responsible adults than live as slaves in a cage. And now we're going to do it. As for the rest of you, all you have to do is stay out of our way. If you insist on putting shackles on yourselves, be my guest, but you will no longer put them on those of us who choose to be free. You believe that by pushing buttons in voting booths, you give certain people the right to rule you. For some reason, you accept it as undeniable gospel that governments have the right to rule you, that the Constitution gives moral permission for these liars and thieves to meddle in your lives. You accept that they own you and have the right to take what you produce, to tell you what you may and may not do, and to tell you what you must do. You refuse to see the truth, that neither constitutions nor voting booths nor legislative rituals can give anyone the right to rule you. You own yourselves, but most of you don't even want to. You feel more comfortable being the property of politicians. It's pathetic how you people still imagine this to be a free country. There's hardly a single thing or activity left in this country that the parasites haven't gotten their tentacles into. You can't lift a finger without government permission, without them taking a cut. The kid who sells lemonade in his front yard is breaking half a dozen different laws. You can't produce anything, sell anything, trade anything, or build anything without paying fee after fee, jumping through hoop after hoop, filling out this form and that form, getting this license and that permit, going through all the inspections, groveling before regulators, and then hoping that whatever moronic bureaucrat you end up with decides to give you his holy permission to do what you had the God-given right to do to begin with. And you call yourselves free? USA, we're number one. Hooray for the pathetic, washed-up, hypocritical, falling-apart slave state that is the United States of America. Exactly what is it about this sheep pasture that you think is still worth celebrating? What the hell do you think that flag represents anymore? What the hell are you proud of? Proud to live in the country with the most intrusive, obnoxious, abusive tax collectors in the world? Proud to live in a country that has a higher percentage of people in prison than any other country in the world? Proud to be ruled by a government that has started and perpetuated more military conflicts in more areas of the world than any other in history? Proud to live in a country where the politicians and bankers have seen to it that you, your children, and your children's children will forever be their indentured servants, to be forever herded and fleeced like sheep? Proud to live in a country where the biggest slime balls on the planet tell you what you can eat, what you can drink, what you can drive, what you can build, where you can work, what you can produce, and what you can think? When July 4th rolls around and you're all swigging your beer and waving your flags, does the fact that we are infinitely less free than we ever were under British rule ever make its way into what's left of your brains? Hooray, the land of the free, where half of what you earn gets swiped by politicians, where you fall for every crisis the liars in D.C. throw at you. They create problem after problem: war, recession, terrorism, poverty, crime, disease, environmental disaster, and you are such well-trained sheep that time and time again you demand your own enslavement as the solution. 200 years ago, Benjamin Franklin told you that those who would choose temporary security over essential liberty deserve neither. Well, you did, and now you have neither, and it's just what you deserve. You look to the biggest crooks in the world to be your all-powerful saviors, and now you are paying the price. You pretend that the things you ask of government you ask from the best of intentions. You only want to feed the poor, to protect the innocent, to punish the wicked. Or so you say. But if your intentions are indeed so pure and noble, why is it that you fail to notice the damage done by the government's so-called solutions? Haven't you noticed what government welfare has done to the poor? Reducing millions of people to stupid empty shells without purpose and without hope? Haven't you noticed that the government schools crank out millions of ignorant kids whose one lasting talent is the ability to mindlessly do as they're told? Haven't you noticed that the government's economic solutions, from socialist redistribution to the fraudulent banking system and its fake money, have impoverished this once prosperous nation? Haven't you noticed that everything the government touches turns to shit? If your motives are pure, why have you not noticed that every time you entrust these challenges to rulers and masters, they end up enslaving the poor, oppressing the innocent, and empowering the wicked? Are you just profoundly unobservant, or is it something worse than that? Could it be that your desire to help others and to fix society is outweighed by your desire to escape the uncertainties and responsibilities of living life as a free human being? Is that why you keep voting for whoever pretends he can save you from reality and magically save you from whatever the future might hold? Why else would you continue to fall for the patently ridiculous lies that all of the politicians keep telling? In your lifetime, every election has been nothing more than that, a contest to choose the better liar. None of them ever meant a word they said. They all had one goal, to rule you, but you never caught on. They kept feeding you a choice between two slimeball crooks, one colored red and one colored blue, and you kept proving that you were too stupid to see through the scam. You kept advocating your own enslavement, unable to comprehend the possibility that you might have the power to do something other than just choosing one of two tyrants to run your lives. And I'm not expecting to talk you out of your illusions here. These days I'd be more likely to get converts out of a herd of lemmings than out of the American public. No, I'm not here to stop you from enslaving yourselves. I'm here to stop you from enslaving that minuscule minority of Americans who still understand what freedom is and who still yearn for it. Amazingly, despite the constant authoritarian indoctrination cranked out by the so-called education system and the media in this country, there are still a few people here who value freedom. You've heard of them. They're the people you love to despise and insult. They're the kooks, the extremists, the people who won't get with the program or go with the flow. They're the black sheep whom you look upon with scorn for wanting to step out of the shearing line. They don't fit in. They're the lunatic fringe. They're not like you. No, they're not like you. They dare to state the truth. You don't. They can think, and you can't. Every inch of progress in history has been their doing, and they've had to constantly fight upstream against all the insults, condemnation, and outright violence which the dull-witted majority made up of people like you has thrown at them. They ended slavery while people like you sat idle. No, it wasn't that fascist Lincoln. They put an end to women being treated like animals while people like you called them names. They spoke out against the injustices of regime after regime while the supposedly good citizens just quietly did as they were told. They resisted the warmongering of this country and countless others while people like you either condoned or turned a blind eye to mass murder. They put themselves in harm's way for the sake of truth and justice while people like you quietly avoided making waves. No, they are not like you, those extremists and radicals. They have taken on the responsibility of being human beings. You glorify people such as Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, Benjamin Franklin and Patrick Henry, but have you ever read a word they said? They were all too authoritarian for my liking, but by today's standards, they were anti-government extremist terrorists. They advocated breaking the law. They said that when a government infringes on the rights of the individual, the people have a right and a duty to do whatever it takes, even if it means bloody revolution, to get rid of that government. Would anyone like to claim that the government we now have is a protector, not a violator of individual rights? The founders taught how important it is for the people to remain armed and to always retain the ability to forcibly overthrow the government if it becomes oppressive. Those kooks, wackos, and extremists that we call our founding fathers committed treason. advocating violent, illegal resistance against their own government, the British Crown. And over what? A few puny little excise taxes on tea and pieces of paper. And what have you done with the country they gave you? Today, you tolerate a level of oppression and intrusion far beyond King George's wildest dreams. Yet you cannot even imagine engaging in passive resistance, much less forcible revolution, in defense of your own freedom. The bravest thing you'll ever do is walk into a booth every few years where no one can see you and press a button to say which of two slave masters you'd rather be owned by. And when some radical does suggest that it's time to grow a spine and resist this heinous empire, you all rush to be the first to condemn that person. Like well-trained slaves, you take pride in your subservience and obedience, while despising those few who have the will to try to escape the plantation, or worse yet, to overthrow the master. If the founders could see you today, they'd be ashamed of you for the opportunity you threw away. Samuel Adams might as well have been talking to all of you when he said, "If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude than the animating contest of freedom, go from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chain sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen." Land of the free and home of the brave? Hardly. You are a nation of enslaved cowards, afraid to act, afraid even to think. You keep telling yourselves that you, the American people, are independent, strong, brave, and free. You are none of the above. Again, I don't expect one speech to change your narrow minds, but before you put your heads back in your rear ends, before you switch the channel to some inane trash approved by the Ministry of Truth, guaranteed to keep you distracted and stupid, I have something to say, and you had better listen close. Some of us still love freedom. Some of us believe that every person belongs to himself. We don't belong to your stupid collective or to your crooked politicians, and we don't need your permission or legislation from your masters to be free. We don't care what you think. We feel no need to refute the government worship that you imagine to be learned opinions. We're done asking you to let us be free. I'm here to tell you we will be free. And if you want to parrot back the rhetoric you've been fed all your lives about how society can't exist without rulers, about how there would be death, destruction, and mayhem if no one was controlling all of us, you go right ahead. Predict doom and gloom until you're blue in the face. Tell us it can't be done all you'd like. And if time proves you right, you can feel smug in your little cages while you say, "Told you so." Or if time proves us right, as it will, you can watch the second great American experiment from a safe distance and see what humanity could be without masters and slaves and the false gods you now bow to. You wave your flags and give lip service to freedom, but you wouldn't know freedom if it slapped you in the face. It's about understanding one simple, basic truth of humanity on top of whatever else someone happens to believe. That it's wrong to start a fight. That it's wrong to be the one to first use force, even if you hide it under the label of government. And that simple belief can be held by all sorts of different people with all sorts of different viewpoints, from goth punks to hippie flower children, to conservative Christians, or to any average Joe and to everyone in between. Freedom doesn't require us all to be the same. Instead, it allows us all to coexist peacefully without being the same. You don't have to agree with everyone else on everything. You don't have to like everyone else. I know I don't. All you must do is acknowledge that each person owns himself, and that it is wrong to initiate force or fraud against him, no matter what you think of his religion, his culture, his race, his intelligence, his age, his behavioral choices, his income level, his hairdo, his taste in music, or anything else. We view and treat each other as adult human beings, each responsible for his actions, each obligated to judge right and wrong for himself. We detest the alternative, the giant daycare center that so many of you seem to prefer, where a bunch of whimpering brats whine about their needs and demand preferential treatment based on some twisted, delusional notion of fairness, while at the same time begging the nanny to punish the kids they don't like. You evade your responsibility as human beings by hallucinating a false god that relieves you of the duty to think for yourselves. You don't want to be free, because being merely obedient requires so much less thought. And so you demand to be ruled. You insist on being enslaved. Then you beg your masters to please be nice to you. Pathetic. Well, some of us have outgrown such schizophrenic insanity. Some of us realize the self-evident truth that no election, no constitution, no legislation, and no other pseudo-religious political ritual can bestow upon anyone the right to rule another. Nothing can make a man into a rightful master. Nothing can make a man into a rightful slave. Using violence against someone who has committed no force or fraud is wrong. What could be more self-evident than that? Some people call the concept libertarianism. I have another term for it: stating the bleeding obvious. It's wrong to start a fight. You can call the aggressors government, you can pretend that they represent us all, you can whine about the common good, you can label the bullies law enforcers, and you can call their violence law or regulation or taxation or whatever you like. It's still wrong, and some of us have been trying to explain this to you for centuries. Guess which extremist fringe kook terrorist said this? Quote, "Rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will, within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. I do not add within the limits of the law, because law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the rights of the individual." End quote. Imagine that. You can do whatever you want as long as you let other people do what they want. How extreme. Thomas Jefferson was the radical who said that. He also wrote in the Declaration of Independence, maybe you've heard of it, that when a government becomes destructive of individual liberty, the people have the right and the duty to alter or abolish that government. So how many of you have lifted a finger to resist the federal Leviathan? Or are you still telling yourselves that the United States government is pro-freedom? How long will you tell yourselves that lie? Even those of you who consider yourselves rebels, most of you seem to think that acting obnoxious and rude qualifies you as nonconformists, yet you end up as nothing more than useful puppets of the establishment you rail against. From the hippies of the 60s to the 80s punks with pierced noses and purple hair to the so-called revolutionaries of today, generation after generation of hip, cool rebels have whined about the status quo only to turn around and embrace the old heinous evil of communism just because it came in a new package. Under the labels of social justice and economic equality, you pitch the same sick, twisted, vicious collectivist oppression implemented by Stalin, Lenin, Mao, and Castro. Only you're too ignorant to know it. Even when you can see the evils of a particular regime, you can't escape the mindset of authority worship. Your solution is always to find a new, kinder, wiser master. It never occurs to you that there is no such thing and can be no such thing as a good slave master. It never occurs to you to get rid of the tyrannical master of the day and replace him with nothing. To yank the despotic king off the throne and to put no one in his place, to leave the throne empty. And so when the people tired of that delusional God-complex collectivist warmongering lying thief George Bush Sr., they replaced him with Bill Clinton, a delusional God-complex collectivist warmongering lying thief. And when they got tired of him, after 8 years they put in yet another tyrannical Bush, this one worse than the first, for 8 more years. Even the spectacle of having to choose between John McHitler and Barack O'Stalin in 2008 wasn't enough to shake the American people out of their blind faith in the cult of democracy. A long time ago, Lysander Spooner explained that a man is no less a slave simply because he is allowed to occasionally choose a new master. But you didn't listen. You still believe that your precious right to vote means that you're free. It doesn't. It means only that your masters have found a way to trick you into not resisting by giving you the illusion that you have some say in what they do. H.L. Mencken told you that the urge to save mankind is almost always a front for the urge to rule, but you didn't listen. Time after time, crooks have posed as saviors, and you kept falling for it. Louis Brandeis, when he wasn't rubber-stamping the politician's socialist agenda, warned that we should be most on guard to protect our liberties when the government's purposes are beneficent. But you weren't listening. Every new goodie, every promise to give something to the needy, to help this or that group, to save the economy, you fall for them all, hook, line, and sinker. 2,000 years ago, even Plato gave the warning, saying that every tyrant, when he first appears, is a protector. But you weren't listening. Alexis de Tocqueville warned that the American Republic would survive until Congress realized it could bribe the people with their own money. But you didn't listen. You still vote for whatever con man promises you the most pork, the best handouts, the most goodies, all of which are paid for with money he stole from you in the first place. Likewise, you weren't listening when Frederick Bastiat warned you that government is the great fiction through which everyone tries to live at the expense of everyone else. Frederick Douglass, a former slave, explained that no man can put a chain around the ankle of his fellow man without eventually finding the other end fastened to his own neck. But you weren't listening. You all clamor to see who can be first to beg government to impose all manner of laws and rules upon your neighbors, and in the process you end up advocating your own enslavement. Mr. Douglass also explained that whatever level of injustice and wrong people will quietly submit to is exactly the level that will be imposed upon them. But you weren't listening. Edmund Burke proclaimed that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. You've probably even heard that one, but you still didn't listen. Albert Einstein put it another way, saying that the world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the evil people, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. But you weren't listening. What have you done to resist the evils you see in the world, or even in your own country? Hide in a corner to avoid trouble? Keep your head down and try not to make waves? Sophie Scholl, member of the White Rose, an underground group in Germany which spoke out against the Nazis, described the situation quite well. The real damage, she explained, is done by the millions of people who just want to survive. The honest men who just want to be left in peace, who don't want their little lives disturbed by anything bigger than themselves, who don't want to make waves or make enemies. Sophie and her friends had their heads chopped off for daring to say such things, while the hordes of compliant cowards in Germany did nothing. And are you any different from them? You people who live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, when have you lifted a finger to oppose the injustice you see? Or have you even noticed it? Are you so busy getting along and doing what you're told that you can still imagine this to be a free country? Have you not noticed the trillions of dollars the American tyrants steal every year? Have you not noticed the millions of nonviolent people who now live as captives behind razor wire fences? Have you not noticed the hundreds of thousands of people abroad they have exterminated? Have you not noticed their tentacles creeping into every aspect of your lives? Have you been wearing your blinders for so long that you can't see what's going on all around you? As John Hay pointed out, and as millions of people have learned the hard way, the evils of tyranny are rarely seen except by those who resist it. Do you think that the fact that you personally haven't gotten into trouble yet, because you're too much of a chicken shit to even rattle your own cage door, means that you're free? Martin Luther King Jr., when he wasn't falling for collectivist propaganda, explained that true peace is not the absence of violence, but the presence of justice. But you weren't listening. You look around and you don't see the open strife and violent conflict that exists in many other countries, and you interpret that to mean that we have peace and freedom here. It means nothing of the sort. It means only that most of the victims of oppression here aren't resisting it. And that is not a sign that you are strong and free. It is a sign that you are weak and cowardly. When the peasants quietly do as they're told, the violence underlying all government remains hidden. It is only resistance that brings it out into the open. The master doesn't need to whip the obedient slaves, but that doesn't mean those slaves are free. For millennia, radicals have been trying to tell you that as a human being, you were born to be free, that your rights do not come from any law or any government, and that it is your right and duty to preserve liberty for yourself, to allow others their freedom, and to never let the schemes and deceptions of would-be tyrants fool you into choosing the predictable, secure life of a caged animal over the uncertain, challenging life of a human being. But you didn't listen. Well, some of us are tired of trying to get you to listen. We're not going to ask you to let us be free anymore. You can continue to choose slavery for yourselves if you wish, but we choose freedom.
You scared of the government, they scared of me. You about to witness. I got King Kong in my trunk, King Kong in my doors. My nuts play ping pong from the noise. You can hear me from a block away. I'm sitting next aggression is depressing. Don't give a motherfucker time to learn this lesson.